What if the secret to unlocking your best work wasn't about working harder, grinding longer, or climbing faster, but about finding meaning? What if leadership wasn't about managing tasks, but about awakening purpose? And what if the real competitive edge inside every workplace wasn't perks, bonuses, or shiny office spaces, but something far more human: community, contribution, and challenge? Welcome to Meaningful Work, a journey into the heart of what makes us feel alive, valued, and genuinely connected to the work we do. Let me ask you something. Have you ever clocked out feeling empty, even though you got everything done? Or sat in a meeting and wondered, why does any of this even matter? Or maybe you've asked yourself, is this really all work is supposed to be? If you've ever felt that tug inside, consider this your sign. You're not alone. And more importantly, this book was written for you. Because today, we're living through a crisis of meaning at work. Not a crisis of talent, not a crisis of productivity, those we've mastered. But meaning? That's the missing nutrient in our modern workplace soil. Employees aren't just leaving for higher salaries. They're leaving for higher purpose. They're leaving because their leaders don't see them. Their work doesn't matter to anyone, and their workplace culture feels more like a machine than a community. And here's the interesting twist. Meaning isn't a luxury. It's not a soft skill. It's a performance multiplier. When people experience meaningful work, engagement skyrockets, burnout shrinks, and entire organizations transform from the inside out. So what creates meaning? Research and real stories from leaders across industries boils it down to three universal human needs the authors call the 3 C's. Community, feeling like we belong. Contribution, seeing the real impact of our work. Challenge, growing into our potential with support and autonomy. These aren't buzzwords. They're the difference between a workplace people run from and one they run toward. Between a team that survives and a team that thrives. In this audiobook summary, we're going to explore how these pillars shape careers, leadership, and lives. You'll hear stories from data centers, dog daycares, biotech companies, and some of the world's most innovative organizations, each proving one simple truth. Every job can be meaningful when leaders know how to cultivate meaning. So settle in. This is not just a summary. It's an invitation to rethink the way you work, lead, and grow. Because the future of work isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters. Now let's step into part 1. Every job can and should be meaningful. And trust me, after this, you'll never look at your workplace the same way again. Let me take you into chapter 1, the chapter that sets the entire foundation for this book, the one that quietly whispers, if you don't understand this, none of the rest will work. And honestly, it's true. Because this chapter forces us to ask a question we don't ask often enough. Why do humans actually show up to work? And spoiler alert, it's not the free snacks. It's not the ping pong tables. It's not even the salary. At least, not once your basic needs are met. Humans crave meaning. We crave knowing that the 8, 9, sometimes 12 hours we invest every day actually matter. Think about it. If perks could solve workplace misery, tech companies with kombucha on tap would be the happiest places on earth. But we all know people working inside shiny offices who feel completely empty inside. Why? Because perks can make you comfortable. They cannot make you care. And that's where this chapter starts its journey. By exposing one of the biggest illusions in modern work. Leaders think people want motivation boosts, but what they really want is meaning. Meaning is the spark that makes a person go from, I have to do this, to I want to do this. Meaning is the difference between an employee who hides quietly and one who shows up fully. Meaning is the reason some teams thrive even in chaos, while others crumble under comfort. And this becomes painfully clear in the story of Keisha, a logistics worker at a Microsoft data center, a cold, buzzing maze of machines where the servers blink, but people often don't. When the pandemic hit, Keisha, like millions, was scared, unsure, and overwhelmed. She was an essential worker who had to walk into a data center every day while the rest of the world stayed home baking banana bread. She wondered why her work even mattered. After all, she was just plugging wires in. And honestly, in the middle of a global crisis, plugging wires didn't feel heroic. But during a workshop on meaningful work, something clicked. She realized those wires she plugged in weren't wires. They were lifelines. Every server she set up kept. Doctors connected to experts. Kids connected to their teachers. families connected to each other, businesses connected to their customers. She wasn't maintaining machines. She was maintaining human connection. And that changed everything. Her entire attitude shifted, not because her job changed, but because her understanding of the impact changed. She even wrote herself a sticky note. Our work is helping the world stay connected. She looked at that note every day, and on the days she felt drained or scared, it reminded her not to give up. This story teaches something powerful. People don't burn out because they're working too hard. They burn out because they feel their work doesn't matter. And the authors go even deeper by pulling in research that proves this isn't just a feel-good idea. It's measurable, trackable, and incredibly predictable. Employees who find meaning in their jobs are 64% more fulfilled, 4.5 times more engaged, 69% less likely to quit. Imagine a workplace where nearly 70% fewer people walked out the door. That's not luck. That's meaning. And if you're a leader, even a leader of one person, you need to hear this part. Meaning isn't random. Meaning isn't magic. Meaning is engineered. The authors explain that leaders can't just hand out new laptops and hope for motivation. They need to intentionally build work environments where people feel connected, valued, and challenged. Because meaningful work doesn't come from doing small things with great enthusiasm. It comes from understanding how even the smallest things have great impact. Let me give you a simple, everyday example. You walk into a coffee shop. The barista is friendly, remembers your order, and hands you your drink with a smile. Most people think, wow, great service. But meaningful work is happening beneath the surface. If that barista feels community with coworkers, contribution in making someone's day better, challenge in learning new skills, then a cup of coffee becomes more than a transaction. It becomes a meaningful moment in someone's job. But take away those three elements, and that same barista becomes another disengaged employee waiting for the shift to end. And that's the heart of Chapter 1. Meaningful work transforms ordinary tasks into extraordinary experiences, not just for the employee, but for the organization. Companies with a meaningful work culture outperform competitors, adapt faster, attract better talent, retain high performers, build trust organically, create communities, not just teams. Because meaningful work is not a perk. It's a strategy, a retention strategy, a performance strategy, a human strategy. And here's the real secret. Meaning makes people better at work and at life. Think about Keisha. Her job didn't change. Her boss didn't suddenly pay her double. Her workspace didn't become a tropical spa. Yet her entire experience transformed. Because she discovered the truth behind her daily work. She discovered her meaning. That's the power this chapter delivers. The profound, practically life-changing reminder that when people understand how their work helps others, everything shifts. Meaning is fuel. Meaning is medicine. Meaning is momentum. And this chapter prepares you to step into the rest of the book by asking one final, quiet question. What would your work and your life look like if you felt meaningful every single day? Let's step into Chapter 2, where the book shifts from why meaningful work matters to who actually makes it happen. And here's the big reveal that hits hard, especially if you're a manager, a team lead, a business owner, or even someone hoping to be one someday. Leadership is the catalyst for meaning. Not HR, not corporate slogans, not posters with inspirational quotes. Meaningful work lives or dies in the hands of leaders. And this chapter makes that painfully, beautifully clear. Think about the best leader you've ever had for a moment. Not the one who gave you the nicest office, but the one who made you feel seen, valued, trusted. The one who made you believe you could stretch a little further, risk a little more, grow a little faster. You probably remember how they made you feel even more than what they did. That's meaning in action. Leadership isn't just managing tasks. Leadership is shaping the emotional environment people work inside. A meaningful leader becomes the person who sets the temperature in the room. Warm, encouraging, and possibility-filled, or cold, stressful, and suffocating. And to explain this, the authors introduce one of the most powerful metaphors in the whole book: upstream versus downstream leadership. Downstream leaders react. Downstream leaders are firefighters, always running around putting out emotional flames. Burnout flare-ups here, engagement issues there, one resignation letter after another. You've probably worked for someone like that. Every day feels like tree-off. Every problem is treated only after it explodes. Upstream leaders, though, they go where the problems start. They walk up the metaphorical river and stop people from falling in. Think of two managers watching employees burn out. The downstream leader offers pizza, an Employee of the Month award, or a 3-minute pep talk. The upstream leader rewrites workloads, opens real conversations, aligns expectations, creates clarity, improves culture, and builds meaning before things break. And here's the key. Employees don't leave downstream leaders because of stress. They leave because the leader never walked upstream for them. This shifts us into the story of HubSpot, a company that's become almost a legend in conversations about modern culture. And this chapter explains why. They weren't accidentally ranked one of the best places to work. They designed it. Katie Burke, HubSpot's Chief People Officer, becomes the heart of this chapter. And her approach is something every leader can learn from. Picture this. It's the beginning of the pandemic. Employees are stressed, scared, juggling remote work, kids, health concerns, global uncertainty. Most companies were scrambling to survive the shift. But HubSpot did something different. They doubled down on care. Instead of asking, how do we keep productivity up? They asked, how do we keep our people whole? They offered parents virtual entertainment for their kids so they could breathe for 30 minutes. They created support circles for employees dealing with sobriety. They intentionally bought anti-racism books from Black-owned bookstores in every region. They connected, supported, reassured, and built community. The message was clear. We don't just care about the work you do. We care about you. And here's the part most leaders underestimate. That kind of care has an economic return, a massive one. This chapter highlights the emotional and economic ROI of meaning, and it's eye-opening. Employees who find meaning at work are more engaged, more loyal, and far more productive. Not because they're pressured, but because they're inspired. Meaning turns "I should do this" into "I want to do this." Meaning transforms obligation into ownership. Meaning makes people not just stay, but stay and give their best. And the data is impossible to ignore. Organizations that cultivate meaning see increased retention, higher performance, stronger innovation, deeper resilience, higher profitability. It's not magic, it's human psychology. And here's my favorite part of the chapter. Katie Burke says that many leaders ask her, how do I improve my company's Glassdoor score? And she replies with brutal sincerity, you're asking the wrong question. Because the real question is, how are you helping people build relationships? How are you helping them see their contribution? How are you challenging them to grow? Meaning is the strategy. High performance is the outcome. Leaders are the bridge. This chapter ends with a gentle but powerful push. If you want meaningful work, you don't wait for HR, and you don't wait for culture committees. You build it. Behavior by behavior. Conversation by conversation. Intention by intention. Because meaningful leaders don't just create better workplaces. They create better people. And those better people create better companies. Now let's move into Chapter 3, one of the most quietly powerful chapters in the entire book. If Chapter 1 explains why meaning matters, and Chapter 2 explains who creates meaning, then Chapter 3 explains what meaning stands on. And the authors don't sugarcoat it. The foundation is alignment. Alignment between what leaders say and what they actually do. Alignment between company values and daily behavior. Alignment between the promises an organization makes and the experiences people have on the inside. Think about it like this. Everyone has had that one friend who says, we should hang out sometime, and never actually follows through. After a while, you stop believing them, right? The workplace is the same. When leaders talk about teamwork, integrity, respect, or innovation, but their actions tell a different story, people don't get upset. They get disengaged. Misalignment chips away at meaning the way water slowly erodes rock. And the authors bring this concept to life through one of the most fascinating real-world examples. Astro Teller, the CEO of Google X, Google's legendary moonshot factory. What makes Astro Teller such a standout isn't just his wild ideas or his passion for innovation. It's his unwavering commitment to living the values he expects from everyone else. Google X is built on values like experimentation, bold thinking, intellectual honesty, and taking risks without fear. Most companies say they want innovation, but then punish people when ideas fail. That's misalignment in its purest form. Google X flips that script. An astroteller does something most leaders would never dare to do. He rewards failure. Imagine closing down a multi-million-dollar project. Most leaders would say, "How could this happen? Why weren't we careful?" Astro does the opposite. He cheers. He applauds. He gives people bonuses for identifying early that an idea won't work. Why? Because he wants to reinforce the behavior that aligns with the values. If innovation is the value, then failure isn't the enemy. It's a milestone. Picture that for a moment. A leader walking into a room, smiling, shaking hands, maybe even throwing a mini celebration, not because a project succeeded, but because the team was honest, bold, and brave enough to kill it early. That's what alignment looks like in real time. That's what culture feels like when values aren't just words printed on posters. And the authors drive the point home. Misalignment destroys meaning almost instantly. When leaders say one thing and do another, employees learn to stop trusting both the message and the messenger. They stop believing the company values. They stop giving their energy. They stop feeling connected to their work. Meaning doesn't fade, it collapses. Think of a manager who preaches work-life balance but emails people at midnight. Or a CEO who talks about transparency but avoids every difficult conversation. Or a company that claims to value diversity but has no diverse voices in decision-making rooms. These contradictions drain meaning from a culture the way air leaks from a balloon, quietly but completely. That's why this chapter is such a wake-up call. Values-driven behavior is not optional if you want meaningful work. It is the core requirement. Employees don't follow what leaders say. They follow what leaders do. Alignment creates psychological safety, stability, and trust. It tells people, you can rely on this place. You can rely on the people in charge. And honestly, when you break it down, alignment is one of the most human things a leader can offer. It's predictability. It's integrity. It's walking the talk every day, even when no one's watching. And when leaders do that, culture becomes stronger, teams become braver, and employees feel something priceless. They feel grounded. Chapter 3 leaves us with a simple truth. Meaning grows in organizations where values aren't just written, they're lived. Chapter 4 moves us into the first of the 3 C's, community. And this is where the book gently reminds us of something we often forget in the middle of deadlines, Zoom meetings, and inbox notifications. Humans are deeply social beings. Even the most introverted person you know still wants to feel like they matter to someone, that their presence is seen, and that the place they work isn't just a building or a screen, but a community where they belong. And that's the heart of this chapter. Connection isn't a luxury at work, it's a biological need. You can give people the best salary, the best remote setup, even the best coffee machine. Trust me, I've seen people stay in terrible jobs simply because the cappuccino machine was fantastic, but without connection, without relationships, without those small, grounding human moments, they drift, they disconnect, they disengage. The authors explain that when people talk about the best jobs they've ever had, they don't mention the benefits package first. They talk about the people. They talk about laughing during lunch, teammates who showed up during tough days, managers who listen like actual humans and not corporate robots. They talk about belonging, because belonging is fuel. It gives people courage. It gives them safety. It makes them want to participate instead of hide. And when you feel like you belong to a group at work, something shifts. You stop working for the company and you start working with the people around you. This chapter explains the science behind it. When people feel connected, their brains literally calm down. Stress decreases. Creativity increases. Problem-solving improves. And suddenly, work feels less like survival and more like contribution. But connection doesn't happen by accident. It requires intention. Leaders need to create spaces where people feel safe enough to speak up, where it's okay to ask questions without being punished, where mistakes are treated as learning moments rather than career-ending events. That's psychological safety. And psychological safety is not the same as being nice. It's creating an environment where people trust each other enough to be real, to be honest, to be human. You know the difference immediately. If you've ever been in a meeting where you were afraid to say the wrong thing, your body tightens, your mind races, and you shrink. But when you're with a team that feels like home, even if the problem is tough, you feel that internal exhale. You lean in, you contribute, and the authors make something crystal clear. Meaningful work starts with meaningful relationships. People don't become engaged because they love the company poster on the wall. They become engaged because they love the people standing next to them. Chapter 4 ends with a simple but powerful truth. If you want people to care about the work, help them care about each other. Because when you cultivate connection, you cultivate meaning. Chapter 5 continues building the idea of community, and this time the focus shifts to something that sounds simple but is surprisingly rare in the workplace: authenticity. Not the buzzword version. Not the bring your whole self to work slogan printed on a poster. Because let's be honest, nobody is bringing their whole self to work. That would include bad moods, questionable jokes, and the version of you that shows up before coffee. What the authors are talking about is the kind of authenticity that builds trust. The kind of authenticity that makes people breathe easier because they know what to expect from you, and they know you're not hiding behind a perfectly polished professional mask. And the chapter makes something clear right away. When leaders show up as their real selves, they give permission for everyone else to do the same. Think of how uncomfortable it is working for someone who's always pretending, always guarded, always acting like they have everything figured out. You can't connect with a mask. You can't build trust with a character someone's playing. But when a leader is human, genuinely human, people naturally move closer instead of pulling away. The authors explain that authenticity is also the doorway to strength-based leadership. When leaders know their strengths and are honest about their weaknesses, they stop pretending to be experts everywhere and start empowering the right people to shine. It's like saying, hey, here's what I'm great at, here's where I struggle, and here's how we can help each other win. That level of honesty doesn't make a leader look weak. It makes them look trustworthy. And trust is the currency of meaningful work. There's a moment in this chapter where the authors describe leaders modeling vulnerability, and it's surprisingly relatable. Think of a leader standing in front of their team, admitting they're overwhelmed, or sharing something they learned from a mistake, or asking for help instead of pretending they've got it all under control. You can almost feel the whole room relax. Because vulnerability, real, grounded vulnerability, creates psychological safety faster than any team-building activity. The truth is, people don't connect to perfection. They connect to honesty. They connect to the person who says, I'm still learning too, or I was wrong, or here's what I'm afraid of, but here's what I'm trying to do. That authenticity becomes the glue of community. It reassures people that they're allowed to be human at work, that they don't have to armor up every morning. And by the end of this chapter, the message is clear. When leaders embrace authenticity, workplaces become more trusting, more connected, and far more meaningful. Chapter 6 brings us to a truth that's so obvious we often overlook it. The beginning of anything shapes everything that comes after it. And in the workplace, that beginning is onboarding. Not the paperwork part, not the badge photo where everyone somehow looks like they just survived a tornado, but the emotional beginning. The moment when someone steps into a new role and quietly wonders, do I belong here? Did I make the right decision? Are these my people? The authors emphasize that onboarding isn't just a process, it's an experience. It's where meaning starts, because those early moments create the lens through which employees interpret everything that follows. A good first day can feel like a warm welcome. A bad first day can feel like the company is saying, we forgot you were coming, so good luck. And you and I both know that first impressions stick longer than we'd like to admit. If you've ever shown up to a new job and no one knew who you were, or your desk wasn't ready, or your manager said, oh, you start today? You remember it years later. This chapter reminds us that first impressions are not just emotional, they are strategic. Research shows that the way a person feels in their first days strongly predicts their engagement, performance, and even how long they stay. When someone feels welcomed, supported, and connected early, it's like planting a tree in good soil. It grows stronger roots. But when the beginning is cold or chaotic, it's like planting that same tree in gravel and hoping for the best. The authors also explore the power of rituals and welcomes in creating meaning. Rituals don't have to be grand or cheesy. They just need to be intentional. Maybe a team goes around and shares one thing they appreciate about having a new member join, or maybe the manager carves out time on day one to explain not just the tasks, but the purpose behind the work. Maybe the company has a tradition where new employees get a handwritten note or a small welcome gift. These moments feel small, but they communicate something huge. You matter. We see you. We're glad you're here. And then there's the idea of early wins. Humans are wired to feel motivated when we succeed early, just like in a video game where the first level is intentionally easy, so you don't quit right away. In the workplace, early wins build momentum and confidence. When a new employee accomplishes something meaningful in their first week, it helps them feel competent, valued, and connected to the mission. It creates the story they tell themselves about who they are in this new environment. By the end of this chapter, the message is clear and beautifully simple. Beginnings matter because people remember how you make them feel before they remember anything else. Create a meaningful beginning, and employees don't just join the company, they join the community. Chapter 7 is one of those chapters that seems simple at first glance. You think you already know what positive feedback is, right? A good job, a thumbs up, maybe a quick compliment during a meeting. But the deeper you get into this chapter, the more you realize how misunderstood feedback actually is and how powerful it becomes when done intentionally. Because here, the authors aren't talking about praise as a pat on the back. They're talking about feedback as a meaning amplifier. Something that doesn't just make people feel good for a moment, but makes them feel important, seen, and valuable in a lasting way. Think about the last time someone gave you genuine, specific, heartfelt feedback. Not the generic, nice work, but the kind of message that made you pause and think, wow, I actually made a difference. Those moments stick with you. They energize you. They guide your sense of identity at work. This chapter explains that positive feedback is not fluff, it's fuel. It is one of the most direct ways to show someone their contribution matters. And when people feel their contribution matters, engagement shoots up, loyalty deepens, and motivation becomes internal instead of forced. The authors introduce a technique that's incredibly simple yet ridiculously transformative, the "if it wasn't for you" sentence. It works like this. Tell someone specifically what would not have happened if they hadn't shown up, helped, solved something, or brought their unique strength to the table. For example, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have landed that client. If it wasn't for you, the team wouldn't have stayed calm during the launch. If it wasn't for you, that project wouldn't have crossed the finish line. That kind of feedback tells a person very clearly that their actions had impact. It shows them the ripple effect they created. And humans are wired to crave that clarity. We want to know that the hours we put in actually changed something. This chapter also highlights how gratitude and recognition dramatically increase retention. And honestly, the research is almost embarrassing for some companies. People don't leave jobs because they want free snacks somewhere else. They leave because they don't feel appreciated. The authors show that employees who feel appreciated regularly are more committed, more energized, and way more likely to stick around through challenges. Gratitude creates meaning. Recognition creates belonging. And it costs absolutely nothing. Yet its return on investment is enormous. What really elevates this chapter is how deeply it dives into the behavioral science behind contribution. When someone receives positive feedback, the brain releases dopamine, a chemical that reinforces behavior. It's the same chemical that fires when we accomplish something or experience joy. So when leaders give meaningful, specific feedback, they are literally rewiring their team's brains to repeat the behaviors that drive success. That's why vague praise doesn't work. It doesn't trigger the same clarity or reinforcement. The chapter also touches on something every workplace feels but rarely says out loud. People are often starving for recognition. They're doing good work, staying late, solving problems, supporting teammates, and hoping someone notices. When no one does, the emotional cost adds up. But when someone finally says, "I see what you did," the relief and validation are huge. People light up. They stand taller. They reinvest. The authors push leaders to understand that positive feedback is not an optional leadership style. It's a responsibility. If you want people to feel like their work matters, you must tell them why it matters, how it matters, and to whom it matters. That's how you turn ordinary tasks into meaningful contributions. This chapter ends with a truth every leader, parent, coach, or teammate should remember. Feedback is not about complimenting people. It's about reminding them that they matter. Chapter 8 continues with a message that feels so simple, yet almost every workplace neglects it. People need to see how their work helps others, not in a vague, philosophical way, but in a clear, concrete, "this is who benefited because of you" kind of way. Because here's the truth the authors highlight again and again. Humans are wired to contribute. We want to feel useful. We want to know that the work we're pouring our time and energy into isn't disappearing into a void. We want evidence that what we do matters. But most organizations, without meaning to, hide the impact from the people doing the work. They keep customer stories quiet. They focus on metrics instead of meaning. They talk endlessly about tasks, but rarely talk about outcomes. And when people can't see the difference they're making, motivation becomes mechanical, just doing the job, instead of feeling connected to it. This chapter explains that the moment employees understand how their work helps real people, something incredible happens. They reconnect. They re-engage. They lift their heads from the monotony and think, oh, that's why we do this. It's like someone switches on the emotional light. One of the most powerful parts of the chapter is the emphasis on customer stories and outcome visibility. The authors explain how leaders should share real stories of people whose lives, businesses, or experiences improved because of the team's work. Imagine a product designer hearing directly from a customer that their idea made someone's day easier, or a customer support rep hearing from a family that their issue being solved actually helped them handle a life emergency, or a warehouse worker discovering that their role in packaging and shipping helped hospitals receive equipment faster. These stories are not nice to have. They're necessary. They anchor the work to meaning. They give purpose a face, a name, a heartbeat. And sometimes the most meaningful moments come from the unexpected. Picture a team of software engineers hearing a story about how a nonprofit used their technology to help low-income students access tutoring. Suddenly, they aren't just fixing bugs. They're expanding possibility for someone who might have never had the chance. That emotional connection is what transforms routine tasks into acts of purpose. The authors also make a critical distinction here. Purpose and meaning are not the same thing. Purpose is the overarching why, the mission, the intention, the big picture reason the organization exists. Meaning, on the other hand, is personal. It's the experience an employee has when they understand the value of their own role within that bigger purpose. Purpose is the map. Meaning is the feeling of movement. Purpose can exist at a company level, but meaning must be felt at the individual level. However, and this is the key, purpose fuels meaning. When leaders clearly communicate the bigger impact, they help people connect the dots between the collective mission and their daily contributions. This creates what the authors describe as a powerful loop. People see their impact, they feel meaning, they act with purpose, the organization thrives, more impact becomes possible. This chapter pushes leaders to step out of the day-to-day grind and tell the stories that matter. Show the dashboards, sure, but show the humans behind them. Celebrate customer breakthroughs. Share testimonials. Bring frontline workers into conversations where they can hear the gratitude firsthand. Ask teams directly, who did we help today? Because once people understand the bigger impact, their work becomes more than a job. It becomes a service. And that connection to service is what fuels long-term engagement, resilience, and pride. The chapter ends with a feeling that lingers long after you finish reading. You don't have to change the work to make it meaningful. You just have to show people the meaning already there. Chapter 9 steps into one of the most misunderstood parts of meaningful work, autonomy. Not the do whatever you want kind, and not the I trust you, but I'm still watching your every move kind. The authors are talking about what they call balanced autonomy, the sweet spot where employees feel free enough to take ownership, but supported enough that they don't feel abandoned. And honestly, this balance is something most workplaces miss by a mile. Some environments smother people with micromanagement, while others throw new hires into the deep end with a cheerful, good luck. Both extremes crush meaning. What people really need, and what this chapter highlights beautifully, is a combination of freedom and backup, trust and guidance, ownership and companionship. Autonomy by itself can be intimidating. Support by itself can be suffocating. But autonomy with support? That's where meaningful challenge lives. That's where people grow. That's where work becomes more than a checklist. The authors introduce one of the most memorable metaphors in the book to explain this balance. The hand on the back and hand under the arm, forms of leadership. Visualize it. When someone has a hand gently on your back, it's a gesture that says, I believe in you. Go ahead, you've got this. It gives you the confidence to move forward, to take the next step, to stretch a little beyond comfort. But the metaphor doesn't stop there. Because right when you start worrying, what if I fall? What if I fail? That's where the hand under the arm comes in. It's the guiding, steadying support that doesn't take over your movement, but keeps you from crashing. It says, I'm right here. I won't let you break anything important, not even yourself. This combination creates a psychological environment where people feel both capable and safe. And when people feel safe enough to stretch, they actually take meaningful risks. They experiment. They try new solutions. They put their creativity on the table instead of hiding it in fear. That's the power of balanced autonomy. It encourages people to act like owners because they know they won't be punished for stepping outside the script. A big point the chapter makes is that growth creates meaning. People need to feel like they're getting better at something, like they're becoming stronger, smarter, more capable versions of themselves. Without growth, work becomes repetitive and deadening. But when people are challenged in the right way, supported but not controlled, stretched but not overwhelmed, they feel alive. They feel the thrill of progress. They feel proud of themselves. And this chapter gets surprisingly real about how this plays out day to day. Think of a manager who gives someone a new responsibility and says, I want you to lead this project. I'm not going to hover, but I'm here anytime you need me. Ask me anything. Seriously, nothing is a stupid question. That conversation gives a person both courage and reassurance. It sends the message, I trust you enough to give you control, and I respect you enough to support you without micromanaging. Or imagine a team member trying something new and making a mistake. A leader who practices balanced autonomy doesn't panic or shame them. Instead, they say something like, okay, that didn't work. Let's look at what we learned. What's our next move? That's how you turn failure into fuel. That's how you build people who are resilient instead of fearful. The authors highlight that meaningful challenge is one of the greatest gifts a leader can give. Because when someone grows at work, it spills into their entire life. They walk differently. They talk differently. They feel different about themselves. And when people feel that sense of growth, meaning naturally rises. This chapter ultimately teaches that balanced autonomy is not about letting people loose. It's about letting people rise. It's about giving them the chance to step into their own potential while knowing they're not alone. Chapter 10 brings us into the final and one of the most energizing parts of the book, the place where meaning becomes momentum. The authors call it the zone of possibility, and once you understand it, you'll see why so many workplaces feel flat, stuck, or stagnant. They never let people step into it. This chapter is all about creating the conditions where people feel challenged and supported enough to grow into versions of themselves they didn't even know they could be. And honestly, if more companies understood this, the modern workplace would look completely different. The idea starts with something deceptively simple, stretch assignments. Not the assignments that overwhelm people, bury them, or set them up for failure, but the ones that push them just enough so they feel excited, a little nervous in a good way, and ultimately proud of what they accomplish. Stretch assignments aren't about dumping work on someone. They're about entrusting them with something meaningful. They signal belief. They say, I think you can do this, even if you're not fully sure yet. And that belief is a powerful motivator. The authors explain that the zone of possibility only exists when people believe they are capable. And here's the meaningful twist. That belief often starts with someone else before it becomes internal. So many of the meaningful turning points in our careers begin not with our own confidence, but with someone else looking at us and saying, I see something in you. That's why leadership matters so much. Leaders create the emotional runway for possibility. They either shrink it with doubt or expand it with trust. This chapter includes Tom's story, a finance leader who wasn't hired in the traditional way but ended up transforming an entire organization. When Tom joined the company, he wasn't given a neat little job description. He was given a challenge and a ridiculous amount of trust. His manager basically said, we need finance to work differently here. Go build it. No micromanagement, no strict rules, no hovering, just belief. And belief became fuel. Tom learned fast. He made mistakes. He figured things out. He built systems. He built relationships. He built a department that didn't just support the business, but improved it. And what's so striking in the story is that Tom didn't start with sky-high confidence. He grew into it because someone else believed he could. The assignment stretched him, but the support steadied him. That combination created meaning. This is where the authors dive into the psychology behind it. Self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the belief in your ability to succeed in specific situations. When people develop it, they don't just perform tasks, they perform at their peak. They take healthy risks, stay persistent in challenges, and feel a deep sense of fulfillment when they achieve something hard. And here's the key. Self-efficacy grows through experience, especially through experiences where someone stretches and succeeds with the right guidance. That's why stretch assignments are not just tasks, they are identity-building moments. The chapter also reminds us that many workplaces unknowingly deprive people of this zone. They either shield them from challenges, I don't want to overwhelm them, which actually prevents growth, or they overload them without support, you'll figure it out, which leads to anxiety and burnout. The real magic happens when leaders walk that middle line, offering autonomy while staying close enough to catch someone before they fall too hard. Imagine a workplace where people are encouraged to try things, to own things, to lead things, with leaders cheering them on from the sidelines, stepping in only when needed, not to take over, but to steady the journey. That kind of workplace builds capability, confidence, and commitment. People don't just feel useful, they feel powerful in the best possible way. By the end of Chapter 10, the message is clear. People reach their highest potential when someone believes in their possibility before they fully believe in it themselves. And when workplaces nurture that belief, meaning doesn't just appear, it explodes. As we come to the end of meaningful work, the authors leave us with a message that feels less like a summary and more like a quiet revolution waiting inside every workplace. And that message is simple but incredibly powerful. Meaning is no longer optional. It's a competitive advantage. The organizations that thrive in the future won't be the ones with the fanciest perks, the tallest buildings, or the most polished mission statements. They'll be the ones where people feel connected, valued, challenged, and proud to show up every day. You can almost feel the shift happening across industries. More and more, people aren't asking, what job pays the most, but where will I feel like I matter? They want fulfilling work. They want real connections. They want to grow. And if leaders can give them that, they unlock a level of engagement, creativity, and loyalty no bonus can buy. Meaning isn't just good for the human heart. It's incredibly good for business. The authors describe leaders of meaningful workplaces as gardeners, not firefighters. And the metaphor fits perfectly. Firefighters react, gardeners cultivate. Firefighters show up once the damage is done. Gardeners prevent that damage from ever happening. Firefighters put out emotional flames. Gardeners create environments where those flames never spark. Leaders who garden focus on soil, culture, trust, clarity, belonging, fairness. They plant seeds, community, contribution, challenge. They water consistently, feedback, recognition, autonomy. And because of their care, their people grow. It's such a refreshing way to see leadership, isn't it? Not as fixing problems all day, but as nurturing potential. Not chasing crises, but shaping conditions. A gardener doesn't yell at the soil for not producing enough tomatoes. They adjust the environment until growth becomes inevitable. Imagine if more leaders behaved that way. Patient, attentive, curious, supportive. That alone would transform the modern workplace. And this is where the book brings everything together, reminding us of the 3 C's: community, contribution, and challenge. Not as isolated concepts, but as the formula for truly sustainable success. Community gives people belonging. Contribution gives people purpose. Challenge gives people growth. When all 3 are present, people don't just work, they thrive. They don't just complete tasks, they bring themselves fully to their work. And when an entire organization feels that way, innovation rises, retention stabilizes, collaboration deepens, trust strengthens. Meaning becomes a force that moves the whole company forward. The authors leave us with one final call to action, not just for leaders, but for teams, individuals, and anyone who plays any role at all inside an organization. Be part of building a workplace where humans can flourish. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start giving more meaningful feedback. Start showing more appreciation. Start communicating the real impact behind the work. Start creating opportunities for people to stretch and grow. Start aligning your actions with your values. And most importantly, start with yourself. Ask what brings you meaning, what motivates you, what makes you feel alive at work, and follow that thread. When you understand what creates meaning for you, you naturally become someone who creates meaning for others. Because meaningful workplaces aren't built through corporate programs. They're built by people who choose, every day, to treat work as a place where humanity matters. And hey, if this audiobook summary added even a little bit of meaning, insight, or inspiration to your day, I'd love for you to help spread that energy. Make sure you like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and of course subscribe to CliffNote Chronicles for more powerful book breakdowns like this, where complex ideas become clear, useful, and actionable for your life and career. Thanks for spending this time diving into meaningful work. Now go build it.